The work is to be clear enough to take a step toward whatever it is you see in the future.
Give me and Brad the secret. I want to know the secret. Like, what are we doing? What do you tell us, people? How do you get them there?
The first thing is,
what do you feel like when you're talking about vision? Like, how far out should somebody plan their vision? Is it 10? Is it 3? Is it 1 year? What do you feel is best?
Oh, hey, they're here.
What's up?
Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. You're really going to like what you're going to watch.
Yeah.
If you haven't liked it yet, you should really hit that like, subscribe button.
Like, subscribe. We're going to get untucked, and you should probably do it with us.
And if not, we're going to get it all in your inbox.
Let's go. Welcome back to Real Estate UnTucked podcast. Today we are talking to someone who has made a huge impact, right? Transformed thousands of lives and really a whole industry, in my opinion. So, Mark, I am so thrilled that you are here. You are the CEO of Inspector Empire Builder, which is, I think, the most influential coaching and systems development organization in the country focused on home inspectors, right? With nearly 20 years of leadership and operational experience. You have coached thousands and thousands of business owners, helping them shift from, I love it, chaos to clarity and overwhelm to excellence, right? Known for the Disciple Project and everything else you're doing. So people better put seatbelts on and get ready to take a lot of notes because you are the king of doing this.
it's quite the honor to jump on with you guys. And that was a pretty flattering opening. I'm sure I'm known for other things as well that aren't so positive, but you know what? We'll dive into the positive side of things today. One thing I'm really focused on right now is this idea and this observation that a lot of the people we work with can see a vision for themselves. They can see something far out, but they have no idea what to do in the next 10 minutes. And that has just been such a theme this year. And I think it's something worth talking about for people for sure.
So first off, how important is it to have the vision? Like, how important is that piece of it?
Well, that's something I would have answered differently early on as a coach than I do today. And so in the very beginning, I would have said it's everything. You can't do anything without vision, and you can't do anything without absolute clarity. And so all the time, the work is clarity all the time. And I think right now, the way I would answer it is that the work is to be clear enough to take a step toward whatever it is you see in the future.
Yeah.
So how are people able to see in the future if they're not looking 10 minutes ahead, right? So like, how do you back people into that? Is it easier for people to have the big dream than like, because I feel like there's a tug of war sometimes. You're like, I don't know what my dreams are. I'm just head down, trying to grind.
I think you just validated it. You posed the problem and then validated it in the same sentence. And so some people are really good at looking far out, and some people are really good at looking at the next 10 minutes. But where we run into chaos is when we're trying to treat those things like they're the same. The vision, a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now is the exact same work that I need to be doing in the next 10 minutes. And so every day that I don't accomplish the 1 year out vision, I'm a failure. Or every day that I'm not taking a step that's very specific, then I'm not working on the vision. And that's probably what has shifted my thinking around vision the most as a coach, is that you can't ignore it. There are just people out there that get more chaos in their mind by trying to think far out, or people who get more chaos in their mind by trying to think near. And we have to figure out who they are before we can help them.
I think so. Just because there's so many people you run into that, like, we've been so hammered with like vision, which is great. Like, you need to have that. Yet, like, I've met so many successful people that they didn't really have this great big grand vision, but they did get great at being effective and efficient in the day. And like, sometimes those people are way more like successful in the long term than the person that had this crystal clear vision. But like you said, they couldn't freaking get from breakfast to lunch and actually get anything done.
Yeah, that's me, honestly. Like, I'm good at far out, but if I'm not really careful, I'll just sit there and dream about stuff really far out. And then before you know it, the whole day's gone by. But
let's talk about, like, how are you helping people? Like, give me and Brad the secret. I want to know the secret. Like, what are we doing? What do you tell us people? How do you get them there?
The first thing is it's a shift in thinking about vision, right? So we think about vision like some sort of big giant thing that we're going to go build, and it's going to lead to all of this freedom because we're creating something. But what I take from my faith, and that, how scripture talks about vision even, is that it actually is constraint. It actually causes a lot less chaos because it gets you focused on something. And so if that's all vision is, focus, then that's something people can sink their teeth into. So when we think 1, 3, 5 years out, it can still be vague, but it's a direction to orient yourself. Whether we're super clear, vivid, and emotionally compelled to go walk out that vision, or whether it's just kind of like a vague statement that gives us a direction, it can accomplish the same thing of saying no to everything else. And that's where the real work is. So when we talk about vision, what we're really talking about at IEB, for example, and some of the other groups I lead is let's talk about what we're not going to do 5 years from now. Let's talk about the things that will not be in our life 3 years from now. And then it starts to get a lot more tangible when you think about your next 10 minutes.
So what do you feel like when you're talking about vision? Like how far out should somebody plan their vision? Is it 10? Is it 3? Is it 1 year? What do you feel is best?
Man, I think the research is pretty clear on this. I mean, gone are the days of 20-year visions and legacies, although those are still important things to think about. But technology and life is just shifting and changing so fast right now that I think the furthest out that they recommend is about 5 years. And even with that, it can seem pretty vague and chaotic thinking that far out with the rate of change right now in society. But what I tell people is a good framework to start with is a 1, 3, and 5 year vision, pretty traditional framework. But it's really not about the 1, 3, and 5 years. It's about having 3 versions of what you are working on so that you have a track to get there. Here's what it should look like at 3 different benchmarks, I guess. And so it could just as well be 3, 5, 12 months or whatever it is. But the concept is that you're giving yourself a target and a path to walk, regardless of how far out it is.
Okay. That makes sense. I agree with that. We have a mutual friend, Wayne and I do, and she gave a speech a couple years ago at a conference we're hosting. And they're like, how long should I plan out? Whatever. And she's like, I think you should look at your goals every quarter. She's like, a year ago I was engaged to a guy and now I'm married to a woman with 2 kids. Like things happen quick. So I was like, you say it like that. Yeah, that goes pretty rapid. So yeah. And that was before AI. All right. So when you're talking about somebody's vision as a business owner, what kind of concepts, and we can also go down a different rabbit trail. We're done with this one, but like, what are the main pillars they need to be looking for to kind of put their eye on that? What prize is that?
What prize is the vision? Or
if you're trying to help somebody capture a vision, what are the main things? Because they can get lost in the weeds and be like, I want to have a new car, which is fine, but like, what's the main mountains they need to be looking at in the far future?
Yeah. Well, I like the concept that it has 2 main ingredients. One is that it's vivid. You can actually see it as realistic and you could almost draw
Don't
it.
get Brad started on this. He just read the Vivid Vision and bro, like he is, I'm the only one. Am I the only one that hasn't read that book?
Well, you have to start.
I've never even heard of
reading.
it.
Okay.
What?
All right. Well, here we go. Make Brad's head even bigger, but keep going. It's got to be vivid. What does that mean?
Well, let me roll it back then. The one thing you've got to do is be completely vague. Just kidding. No, vivid is important. So yeah, you've got to be completely clear on what it is in that you can it's tangible really is the concept, right?
Yeah.
But the other ingredient is emotionally compelling. If it's not moving you, then it's not going to move you. And so those 2 ingredients, I think, create a really compelling vision. And so most people, they want something like this much money, but it doesn't necessarily emotionally move them, or it doesn't necessarily look vivid in their future. It looks like chaos. Well, how do I get that?
Yes.
And there's too many questions.
Yeah. No, so I know I showed it, but like this, I've been through this recently. It's the Vivid Visions book by Cameron Harold. I'm trying to read backwards. This kind of walks you through building the vivid vision and like taking time and certain things to think about and like sort of a structure. Because when you start talking about, I've been in business 20 years, you start saying, what's your vision look like for 5 years? I'm like, bro, I don't know. Like I have no clue because I've been in it. So this actually helps me make it to tangible and make me really dream of what I want my office to even look like what I want the consumer experience and all the stuff that really kind of helps. And so that's been very helpful to take it from thoughts to paper to like hopefully planning.
What's y'all's advice to people that are like, I love that, I want to do that, but they feel like they have 14 trails that they could go down? Like, how do you help them create a vivid vision when they feel like, well, I could do 100 different things? You know what I mean? Like, how do you help them narrow that down or get clear on that?
Medicine.
Vyvanse.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. In my mind, it starts with what do you want most versus what do you want right now. Usually when you have a lot of competing thoughts or competing paths in your head, it's because you're trying to find what you want right now.
Yeah.
And so focusing on what you want most is usually a little bit further out. There's delayed gratification, bigger payoff. And those are 2 different things.
Yeah. I think for my answer would be, it's very similar. I mean, like, it's not a competing thought, but it's more of a, let's lay them all out and look at them. Because oftentimes they snowball into one another. And so if you really focus on one, it's going to help you get halfway to the next one. So if it's like, I want to, like a friend of ours, again, Wayne, that wants to give away $1 million in charity. Like, sure, that's her goal, but she knows she has to sell houses to get there. She has to do this to get there. So it's kind of like almost like a Dave Ramsey snowball, like work on this one, get the momentum, then start on that one once you hit it. And definitely not walking 14 different dogs at a time, right? Like kind of line those things up and get to your location first. So that'd be my thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and in my 2 cents, what I found helpful is 2 things. One, sometimes you have to write out 3 different versions, right? Like, here's what version 1 could look like. Like, sometimes you kind of have to write out a couple of versions. And I love, I can't remember his name, but your guy at the event, right, a couple weeks ago said, say yes to the best yes. You know what I mean? So I thought that was a really cool way of framing that. And then the third thing that's a little bit more extreme, but I found helpful for some reason is sometimes you have to write down what you don't want. So sometimes it's easier to write down what you don't want as a jumping off place. Like, I don't want to be chained to my office. I don't want that, you know what I mean? So sometimes figuring out what you don't want can help you get clear on what you do want. So, all right. So Mark, so we got that clear. People get that clear all the time, and then they just screw up every single day. So what's some of the framework or the tracks or the principles you give people, like, how do we nail the day?
Yeah, I think it's not rocket science. There's no secrets. There's no magic pills. There's no one book to rule them all. I mean, the truth is you've got to find a personal operating system that works for you, that serves the way that you operate in life and the way that you want to show up. And so really that is all about turning your vision, big, giant, vague thing, or maybe even vivid thing, into what you're going to do every day. And so I refer to that a lot as your rhythms. I think there are rhythms in everything. And there are business rhythms, there are personal rhythms, there's ebbing and flowing, and we've got to use those on purpose. So on a tangible side, that's, we were talking about your 1, 3, 5-year vision as an example. You would bring that down into your 1-year strategic plan, whether it's on the personal side, professional, faith, health, whatever it is, all of that. And then you just leverage the year, right? Quarterly strategy assessments, monthly activity checks, weekly goal review, daily rhythms and routines. When you have a system in place to reorient you to what's most important in a moment, then you just keep more momentum. And by momentum, I don't mean speed or extremism. I mean actual momentum, which gets you further and faster over time rather than just start, stop, start, stop, start, stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very analytical view of it. But like most of the people we talk to, I'm just curious how you take somebody that's driven, a little bit of ADD, like all over the place. If you say quarterly check-ins with your business plan, they're gonna be like, I don't comprehend that, right? So like, is it taking your goals for your first year and like breaking down the 5, let's call it revenue sources to get there, and then building out how much time you have to do? Like, how do they actually tangibly, tactically do something like that?
I think it's very simple. I'm definitely an ADHD guy. I took Ritalin for 9 years and eventually just decided I didn't want to anymore and was diagnosed with it a long, long time ago. And so I am the guy you just described. Makes perfect sense. Have no idea how to do it, right? And so I had to work my way into it. And so first off, it has to be simple. It can't be complex, because we are really attracted to complex things. We want to build these complex structures because it gives us a big reward to think we're doing hard things. So we make everything hard. But the idea is that this is simple. As an example, your morning routine should create energy, right? Very simple concept. Your weekly goal review should not just reorient you toward what's most important and tied to your bigger goals, but it should optimize your week for time. So you can do this in 20 minutes. You look at your goals, go, yep, check. I'm thinking about those. And then you look at your week and you say no to everything that doesn't make sense. Optimize for time.
So are you a believer of like, grind? Just, I mean, if you want it, you just got to work it. I mean, eat, sleep, breathe it, or is there more strategy to it?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So I am a believer in grind. I'm also a believer in purposeful rest, because I think deep growth requires deep rest. And so, as I said, there's rhythms in everything. One of the things that I see a lot coaching people in general is that they have this desire to stay peaked in their performance all the time. And I think you can stay peaked in performance for long periods of time. All of us get to a point of diminishing returns, right? Where we start to recognize it's taking longer to accomplish things. It's my thinking is foggy. It's confusing right now. We're just not getting as much output as we're used to. And so what do? Most people, if they ascribe to just the grind side of things, they'll just work harder, which accelerates their burnout, accelerates their confusion, accelerates the fog. And then eventually they're throwing away every single plan they've ever had because it's now not making any more sense. And so I think with this, we've got to build into those rhythms throughout the weeks, the years, purposeful rest where we're stepping away to completely pattern interrupt and do something different. So yes, I think there is definitely times to grind and there's times to do whatever the opposite of that is for people.
So does that work? I mean, it's like a Hermosi thing, right? So he says like, I work until I'm tired and then I take time off. It may be a day, maybe 3 days, but I also may work 21 days because I like it. And so is it purposeful? Do you plan that out? Do you say, hey, every third week I'm taking a long weekend? Or is it just kind of when your body tells you and your mind tells you to give it a break?
That's what I recommend to people. And then for me personally, it's about every 6 weeks. So I did it. I just discovered this through journaling. It was an accident, complete fluke that I figured this out. So I couldn't figure out why I was tired all the time and just hating what I was doing years ago. And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to journal every day and figure out what the answer to this is. And the question was, well, how do I feel today and why? And then in my nerdy sense, I plotted that on a graph, 1 through 10 scale, and I could see these ebbing and flows to downs.
I'm like, I just want to get in there and just see, like, he's like, I plotted out. I'm like, I felt a vibe, and then whatever. No, this is great. Keep going.
Well, what I saw in there was the pattern. It's like, obviously, there's a rhythm here. There are times when I'm feeling way up and times where I'm feeling way down. What would happen if I could predict when I was going to feel down, and instead of crashing and burning into some valley, I stepped away on purpose? And so that was the discovery for me. And about every 6 weeks, I would just completely hate what I was doing and want to step away and change the environment. And so something like every 6 weeks, I now just do it on purpose. And that works for me, right? Other people may have much more capacity. Maybe they can go for a year, or maybe they go for just a couple weeks. But we all have a rhythm that we should be aware of.
Is that like a vacation, or is that just like a day with no phone? What's worked for you?
2 different answers there. So in general, it's got to be whatever refills your energy, right? So I'm a huge believer in just living an adventurous life. Go do something adventurous, whatever that means to you. That could mean staring at a wall, if that's your version of adventure, right? Just being in solitude. For me personally, though, I've got to just change the environment. It's as simple as that. Whether it's go out of town or just not walk into my office for a week and work somewhere else. It does not have to be complicated, big, expensive, or time consuming. It just has to be a pattern in it.
Or go try to die on a mountain bike trail. So yeah, is that the last story that I heard? Yeah. So, and here's the thing that I think is great in what you're saying. It's like, know thyself. So journal, track, like, I think you got to figure out yourself and go like, hey, I always feel like crap then, or this, I don't like this pattern. Why do I hate every Tuesday, right? Maybe I need to adjust Tuesday, but I think without intentional reflection, like you're talking about, that yearly, quarterly, monthly, you miss out on all the opportunity that you could have for yourself, right? Which I think is great what you're doing. And part of that is like, if I was going to write a rhythm for me, right? If I was going to write out like a prescription, what would be on there, right? Every 6 weeks I do this, every day I do this, every month. It's like, actually take the time to write that out. And I think that's the hardest thing for most people, to actually do. Yeah, I think it's good.
So if you're coaching your inspectors or whoever it might be, it's getting towards the end of the year. What is your recommendation for them to kind of wrap up their year or start their next year? What have you found to be good advice for business owners?
So it's the exact same skill that you use if you're going from one meeting to the next, right? On a micro level, but now we're talking more on a macro level. You just transition on purpose. And so you've got to pause and reflect on what happened this year versus what you said would happen this year. Like, did you stay on point? Did your activity match your goals? And really reflect, because self-awareness is the foundation from which everything grows, business included. And so
hit me with some more of those questions. I want to hear, like, what are 4 or 5 of those? So like, did my actions match my goals? What were some of the other ones?
Yeah. So the starting point would be to get out the plan that you had written down. And by that, I mean, you had a written down plan.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. People are like, oh shoot, I can't do step 1. Yeah.
Yep. And so if you didn't have step 1 box checked, then, just do your best. Your intentions for the year were something. And if you didn't have any intentions, you can still ask yourself, well, how did I do this year in this area, that area, right? So if we're just talking business, then, I mean, that's pretty easy. We want the numbers to tell the story. So we're going to look at our revenue, our profit, everything that we had retaining clients or servicing clients, whatever your thing is, and just tell that story. But that story has to have a conclusion. And it can't just be open-ended. The conclusion has got to be something like, we killed it this year, here's why. Or we didn't kill it this year, here's why. Or we were just flat, here's why. So that we can now accelerate into the next year, right? We don't want to just kind of creep up to the finish line January 15th and then kind of walk across the starting line January 20th. We want to like explode into the year. And so that takes an intentional pause, a reflection for the year, and then setting those intentions, which in business is easy. We just set goals for the business. But in life, people tend to make that really, really complicated because they don't know how to evaluate themselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting. One of the things that I think you probably expect from your clients, like I do, is like, let's go through these, not just your business, but let's go through the personal areas of your life. And it's like, what did I do good? What did I do bad? And what do I want to do different? And then, like, if we can't, you have to force yourself to answer those questions before you pass go and keep going, right? So like in my business, in my relationships, and then in your business, you can break it down to subcategories, marketing and all this other stuff. But I think you really got to take the time to do it. And if you're not doing that, then we're just going to keep repeating, the sins of the past, if that makes sense. So, okay, here's what I'd love to pivot into, if you're okay with it. Why the hell inspectors and how the hell? Okay. So I want to know the two hells. So here we go. Brad will talk about the third hell on Sunday, but the first one is like, why home inspectors? And then like, how have you built such an amazing group and community in that? Cause most people, there have been many, many thousands that have tried. You're one of the few that has actually succeeded. So why? And then give us some of the how.
Yeah. So the starting point is that almost everybody assumes that I've built a home inspection empire myself, and I have not. That's not what I do. And so I build impact companies. That's my thing. So coaching businesses, communities, training people to do coaching and build their own coaching businesses, all that kind of stuff. That's what I love to do. And so I'm going to give you the very short version of the last 25 years. I started as a paramedic. I'm a paramedic by trade. That's my technician background. I kept promoting, and I ran a county EMS agency. That was a pressure cooker of a situation. And then I was a task force leader with the state of Texas doing cool stuff in emergency response. And I thought that my career was going to go into state, local, or federal politics in the emergency service lane, which is what I loved to do, put together teams, systems, processes in a high performance, literal life and death environment. But because my career was headed more and more toward politics, I went and got a public administration degree, learned all about government, and then almost overnight decided I'm absolutely not going to work for government. So the more I learned, the more I got pushed away from it. And I thought, you know what? I got to get out of here. I left that industry, went back to school, got an MBA, and thought I'll just become some kind of consultant in the emergency service space, which would have been really fun. Who knows? Maybe that's still in the future somewhere. But I accidentally met some people who had just decided to start a franchise with health coaches in the Houston area. They had just purchased the rights to 6 different locations, and they needed somebody to build those out. And so I stepped in. I thought it would be a fun project to finish an MBA and build a business at the same time. And it was incredible. It was so much fun. What I ended up doing was building teams of coaches and then coaching myself, sometimes 12, 13, 14 hours a day. And I caught the bug for doing that, the impact that coaching has. Fast forward a handful of years, I was looking for the next great team of people to work with, and I found the people at IEB who had actually already started IEB. So it had been going for a couple of years before me stepping in, and they needed somebody to come in and turn it into its own system, process-driven business and to put the coach team together and keep it going and accelerating. So that's what we've been doing the last 6 years.
That's awesome. It's funny how it's funny how your life starts and then how it, pushes you and molds you into a certain location. So that's awesome.
Isn't that weird though? Like I'm a paramedic turned CEO of a home inspection mastermind.
I think it's amazing. How has it been different than you expected?
Truth be told, it hasn't been. I don't know that I had expectations, and so when I came into this, I wanted to really focus on the community side of things. And we've learned a few things for sure. I would say that our team is our team. They get all the credit. They're expert level at a lot of things at this point. Not perfect by any means, but they do a lot of really good stuff. One of the biggest lessons we learned is that mastermind groups and communities are not the same thing. Right. And so as we grew and scaled and had hundreds of businesses in our membership, we were still using mastermind tactics with community-sized groups. And that doesn't always work really well. And so we had to develop our own sort of framework for that, keeping it feeling small, intimate, and impactful while having hundreds of people rubbing shoulders together. And so that's part of how we've accomplished, to your question, Wayne, part of how we've accomplished such a tight-knit culture and community is with that framework we've learned. So
what is some of that framework for building community? Because I know there's a lot of people with great hearts that want to serve a certain community and they just can't make it happen. You know what I mean? So whether it's they want to take care of dog owners or single parents or whatever, it's like they really struggle with it. So what are some of the, if you like, here's some of the keys of 3, 4, 5 keys to building that community or what's worked?
So it's the very same tactic we would say when you bring in a new employee. You have a lot of control at the beginning, and then eventually you want to turn it into a self-managed person, right? A self-managed employee. I think masterminds and communities are the same. So at the very beginning, the launch, or when you're bringing a bunch of new people in at once, you have a lot of control over the conversation, and you want to train them how to engage, how to encourage each other, how to really show up authentically, and even, but then you want to get out of the way. It's got to take on a life of its own so that people want to come back to support each other rather than come back and listen to the guru every single time you meet. That's step one, I think, is realizing it's not about you. It's about bringing together the right group of people. Another thing I'd say is a lot of people who do what I do, coaching and masterminding, is their marketing message sounds like, hey, come jump into this group with me. If you are a broken business owner, I will fix you. When in reality, it should be something like, we're putting together an amazing group of people who are kicking butt and they want to go to a new gear. Because that makes the group attractive rather than the guru attractive. Very, very different.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think it's so. You build with masterminds, so having like small groups, teach them how to do it, and then kind of release them to keep doing it. Yeah, what else works to keep them together? Is it do you force interaction? Is it small group? Like how do you kind of help create and keep that going, I guess?
So we refer to this as expert facilitation. We want to become expert facilitators. And so when we do training for coaches who want to do mastermind groups, the content almost doesn't even matter until you can get the facilitation skills down. So for example, if we were opening up a group today and there were 10 of us, one of the biggest mistakes people do is they kind of open up, they warm up a little bit, and then they go, okay, guys, so what do you think? What did you do? Where are you? And they just go straight into this abrasive, almost like you are fighting against the people to force them to talk. That's not really great facilitation, right? And so there's rhythms to this stuff. For example, in this case, we would say, never ask your group to do something without having first given them time to think. And so a very simple framework, right, is warm up your call, get them to think about something because you've shared and got their minds moving, get them to jot a couple things down. And then when it comes to questions, they're just sharing what they wrote down. What did you guys write down? What are you taking away? And you're taking the thought work out of it so that they'll respond more quickly and they'll have better engaged conversations.
That's great.
Just one tactic.
Dude, I love that. Give me 2 more because I'm rolling with this. I think that's great.
All right. So this is what I would call a facilitator sin. Pushing so hard.
Maybe that should be your next book, Facilitator Sins. Like that would be a phenomenal book, by the way. That would be great.
That's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
I would buy that right now.
One facilitator sin is to push so hard on your content because you feel this urging to get through all of it that you stifle the conversation. And so I've seen this a lot where people will feel so good about their content and their content's amazing. They know the content's the thing that's going to help them. But we know as coaches that the more you're talking, the less they're learning, right? And so if you're pushing through a group to just hear you, they're not really actually doing anything in their mind that's causing change. And so I think one of the best things we can do is go slow, do a lot of checking for understanding, pulling people into the conversation and making sure that they feel a certain way rather than they know a certain thing. And so when you're preparing for your call, let's say I'm going to talk about, sales training 101, kind of a boring type of training, but it's all over the place. But, I want them to know maybe these 3 nuggets when they leave. But what's more important is what I want them to feel when they leave. Let's make sure I craft the conversation for that. Typically, I want them to feel like they had a voice, like they had a question answered, and like they connected with the other people on the call. And so if none of those are true, then all they did is come to a PowerPoint presentation. And we know that those are not super effective, right?
Dude, I love that because I think there's often times where we're so committed to the content or what we think we need, and we're not giving them time to think or we're not allowing them to connect. or we're not reading the room, right? Like how many times you've been giving something, you're like, oh shoot, in your mind, like, man, I need to throw my book out the window because blank just came up and we gotta go there. But a lot of people don't do that. And yeah, it causes a lot of pain. So man, that's seriously, write that book. I think if you wrote The Facilitator Sins or like how to actually lead masterminds, things that, man, that would be so good. Because so many people, what they've learned by like trial and error, but they don't even really know what they've learned too. So like, I think you've done a great job. Like, okay, here's what I learned, and you can actually articulate what that is. So I think that's been great. What have been some of your hardest lessons as a leader? Like, what have been some of the hardest things you've learned or biggest changes you made in your leadership style as you've
Man, I'll tell you, the first thing that comes to mind is where I see coaches struggle, and I certainly did too for a while. I'm sure I will again in the future as I talk to higher and higher levels of people. But most coaches are coaches because they know how to solve a problem, and usually a very specific problem, something they've gone through in their life. And so if their client no longer has that problem, they don't know how to serve them. And so you can kind of shoot yourself in the foot as a coach if you don't develop your skills, because it's like, oh, we solved that discipline problem or whatever it was. And now I don't know how to help you. And our conversations are just shooting the breeze every single day, every time we meet. And so one of the hardest things is helping somebody who seemingly doesn't need help, or rather somebody who's doing really well, helping them perform at a new level. I mean, this is the kind of client that will show up and be like, no, I feel pretty good. Everything's working. I'm doing everything you said. Things are rocking and rolling. And then the coach will go, shoot, man, well, let's keep poking and prodding to find something that's not going well, rather than saying, let's help them understand what they're doing well at a deeper level so they can keep leveraging that at higher and higher levels of performance.
Interesting. So give me an example of that. I want to understand that I want to understand that better.
I've got a couple people who are really, really good at caring for themselves, right? And so their routines are on point. They're exercising. They communicate really well with their families, with their teams. Their businesses are doing just fine. And so in my early days as a coach, I would have been just continually asking questions until I uncovered some kind of pain. I would have been focused on pain, right? Where is the pain? Where do I need to help them? But at this point, for those specific types of people, I think it's more useful for them to take the lead, and we'll even reverse roles sometimes. Hey, if you were in my shoes, what would you be exploring with me? And so getting them to start developing their own set of coaching skills oftentimes can help them uncover places in their life that need coaching. And so this is a little trick I love, which is if you role reverse and they start asking you questions, then you're instantly picking up on the questions they need to be asked, because that's what they're going to start thinking. And so people always tell you what's kind of in their mind when they're talking, not when they're listening. And so sometimes you just got to flip it around and get them talking and asking questions.
Do you feel like there are certain types of people that shouldn't be coaches? I mean, like in our realm, everybody, like you close 3 deals and they're like, I'm a coach now. Like, do you think there's certain qualities they need to have? Or you think like everybody can be a coach if they try hard enough? Sorry, Wayne, don't get offended.
That's a tricky one to answer. So I've got 2 answers I'll throw out for you. Like any good coach, right? I'm not going to get pinned down on anything.
This is the political side coming out.
You may have missed your calling, actually. Yeah.
So 2 thoughts. One is, I think that there are a lot of people out there who have a great heart and are better positioned to be a mentor than a coach. And so perhaps they've been through something and they can help people get through something. I don't think that's necessarily coaching. I think that's experience sharing and helping people understand that there's a path. Here's the path, right? Now, coaching in my mind is a very specific skill set. What I typically tell people when they're exploring coaching is it doesn't matter how much money they want to pay. We always start here. Let's talk about what coaching actually is so that you understand, because usually when people in business are looking for a coach, what they really want is a consultant, right? And so in the purest sense, a consultant is going to be somebody who says, here's my plan, here's my strategy, here's your gaps, here's how to go implement my plan and my strategy. Good luck. In the purest sense of coaching, it's going to be something like, hey, Brad, I'm going to ask you nothing but questions. Just questions. And the point is that you already have what's in you to go to the next 2 or 3 levels. We just need to organize it into a plan, right? So now it's your plan and I'm helping you. A really skilled coach or somebody who's going to really do well in coaching has both of those skills, consulting and coaching, and they can understand when to navigate toward each one with their client. Now, if somebody is more of a mentor, they've gotten through one problem, they're probably not going to do so well on the consulting side here's a framework for that thing you're experiencing. Here's a framework for that thing you're experiencing. And if they, clearly, if they also don't have some soft skills, communication skills, and things like that are more on the technical side of coaching, obviously they don't go very far with people and they can't create impact. But all that to say, in the concise answer, I think a lot of people can be trained to be great coaches. I don't see a lot of people actually getting great training being coaches.
So, next question. Do you have to be trained to be a good coach, or some people can just put it on their business card and they've got it?
Do you have to be trained? No, I don't think you have to be. I think some people have some natural affinity for this stuff, but most people do not. I'll tell you what I did, because my experience is the only thing I know best. And so for me, I had thousands of hours of coaching by the time I realized I want to take this to a different level of impact for people. And so I went out and found the longest, deepest, most robust program I could find, not for anything other than confidence. I knew that if I became a more confident coach in my skills, then I could help higher levels of people. And so that's what I set out to do, is find a program that would make me confident in my skills, and then everything else I could add on top of that. I would recommend that to anybody. What I would not recommend is calling yourself a coach because you took, 4-hour class online and now you believe in your 2 or 3 frameworks that you learned.
If you can get ordained online, I think you'd be a coach online. Come on now. I think you can do that.
You can certainly get started.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say, because I don't know. I just think people use that as a thing to try and make money. I think they're just fleecing people oftentimes, because the way you nailed that of they're a mentor because they took them through a thing that they had. It's not a one-trick pony. It's not a negative. They just knew how to navigate this, one thing, and they're good at it, but they think they're good at all of it. And I see a lot of people getting fleeced out there for exorbitant amounts of money.
100%. I'm completely with you on that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So what is at the end of the day, I'd love to know 2 things. First off, how does your faith play into how you show up in your community and how you make decisions?
My faith guides everything that I teach and learn. And so my routines and my rhythms all include learning in the faith lane. And then what I love to do is take biblical concepts into the personal growth lane. So I don't believe there's anything new under the sun, as they say. And I think everything is God's design. And that if we can sort of slow down and realize that there are neurological truths, even in scripture, we can make a lot of really powerful connections between current ways of thinking and personal growth and personal development that have always actually been around. And so, for example, when I think about how to help somebody perform as a better leader, well, a really great leader puts everybody else first, right? That doesn't mean that they don't have a powerful personality or that they don't have all of the skills necessary, or that they're not admired and put on a pedestal in other people's minds, but in their mind, they put other people first. That's a biblical concept, right? That's 101 right there. And so I think, just to keep my answer short, I don't think that there's anything that we could discover or say that isn't already said. And people are really treating the personal growth space in the last handful of probably decades like we are so smart and discovering new things, when in reality, I just don't think we are.
So are you an Old Testament coach or a New Testament coach? Like, what's your personality? Because I'm in Deuteronomy right now, or I can't ever say that word right. Bro, yeah. That's a whole different type of coaching than it would be in the New Testament.
It's not, though. It's not. So here's something. I have a degree in politics, religion, and business. And so I love all topics all the time. We could go super deep into this. Once you get through the entire Old Testament, all the different sections of the Old Testament, what you realize is that the theme is always about the heart, and it's always about people leading from love. The New Testament is too. It's just more explicit in the New Testament. And so you get to see the other side of what it looks like to not follow in the Old Testament a lot more. In the New Testament, you just simply see a guide for living. Whereas in the Old Testament, I think you see a lot of evidence for what it looks like not living that life.
That was a lot better answer than I was expecting.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, what do you want to be remembered for, man?
I'm not really great at answering these types of questions because I don't spend a lot of time thinking like that. But I guess if I had to pick something on the spot, I'd probably say something like, I want to create impact that creates impact. So if somebody was talking about Mark, years from now, and I'm no longer around, I'd want it to sound something like, Mark created coaches that created worlds of impact. And rather than, Mark worked with a handful of clients or something like that. He built impact businesses and he built impact ripple effects all over the place. I got to wordsmith that better, but something like that.
I think that's so great. I think it's awesome. So for you, what's the biggest challenge you're tackling this year? What do you want to be proud of if we're sitting here a year from now?
Yeah, a year from now, I think something I want to be proud of is that I did not go with the temptation to go fast, and instead I went deep. So in each of the businesses, in the key relationships that I have, my family, my faith, I'm definitely always tempted to go fast because I'm a fast person. I'm not a high patience kind of person, behaviorally speaking. And so as an example, I'll pile up all kinds of things on my plate and then have to go slow because I've weighed myself down. I want to fight that temptation and instead just keep myself free of that and go deep with people with impact. That would be a huge win next year.
Yep. Love that. All right. I'll let Brad ask the last question, but I'll ask one before then. If you had 30 seconds to get a message out to all the business owners right now before they go into next year, like what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
What you think is that if you nail it in business, then you'll be free enough to be healthy, free enough to spend time with your family, free enough to have money and time freedom. But it is nailing all those other things first that keeps you free enough to have longevity in business.
Damn.
And that's a wrap. Mark, thanks for being on here. Thanks for sharing everything. There is no question after that. So, no, but in all honesty,
Brad and I are going to go journal in a corner for the next hour, but thanks. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, for real. Thanks, Mark. I mean, your impact on other people is amazing. I mean, obviously you're building a career that is to help and serve and also help them create wealth and generational trajectories that change. And like, there's not a lot of people out there doing that well. And so we appreciate taking time on here and just doing that for our society in general. We need more of that. So thanks, dude. Appreciate meeting you and I appreciate you being on here.
Thank you very much. It's been awesome hanging out with you guys.